Welcome to Bonnie's Beat. I'm your host, Bonnie Squires. We're coming to you from the studios of Radnor Studio 21 and Lower Merion Narberth TV these days. We like to bring you interviews with people who are doing important things in the community, who are movers and shakers. And we've got a longtime mover and shaker who came from the law office where he is the director. Let me get this right. Kenneth Davis is the Senior Director of Duane Morris Government Strategies. That means he knows everything there is to know about Harrisburg and Lower Merion. And he's the former president of the Board of Commissioners in Lower Merion Township. Hi, Ken.
Good afternoon. Nice to see you.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy schedule, I know, to come talk to us. And I also want to mention the fact that you serve on the Lower Merion Township Cable Television Advisory Committee.
Yes, I do. I've been there for about 2 years, and it's great work. When I was a commissioner in Lower Merion, we created the public access television channel, and so it's nice to come back and see how it's doing.
I have to claim some responsibility for creating that channel because for years I wrote columns. Why doesn't Lower Merion have a local public access channel just the way Radnor does? Because for 13 years I've been doing my show at Radnor Studio 21 because an executive from Comcast 14 years ago met me at some event out of King of Prussia, and I said, "Oh, I'm so jealous. Radnor has this wonderful station, third station." And he says, "Oh," and he writes down a name. He says, "You call this guy." I'm going to call him. And the next day I called George Strimmel. It was a Friday. He said, "Come in right away, meet with me." And he says, "You'll do your first show Monday." So I didn't have time to panic. I lined up a guest, and that was 13 years ago.
Well, it took a while to get started. We did have an operator first, and they pulled out of the station management about a year or so ago. And
18 months ago.
Yeah, and we put out an RFP, request for proposal, and George and the Radnor Studio folks submitted, and I was pleased to support them, and we're delighted that they're our partner now.
So now Radnor Studio 21 also operates Channel 99 on Comcast in Lower Merion.
Correct.
Verizon always carried Radnor Studio 21 on Channel 21 between Ballackinwood and Broomwall and out a little further. I think it goes to Westchester also.
Right, it does.
But Comcast only carried it on Channel 21 because it's Radnor Studio 21 in Radnor Township.
Right.
But now we're in Lower Merion, so my mother finally gets to see her daughter on television on Monday nights. Yes.
Well, regardless of whether you are a Verizon subscriber or a Comcast subscriber, you can now get our television show.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it's funny because a lot of the people that I interview, like you, are Lower Merion residents. I live in Lower Merion, and that's my circle of acquaintances and professional people. What was the best thing about being chairman or president of the Board of Commissioners in Lower Merion?
Well, I come from a governmental and political background anyway. I got my start in Washington working for Senator Hugh Scott from Pennsylvania.
He was wonderful.
He was a wonderful man.
Hugh Scott was a Republican in the days when the Republicans were really rational.
And,
I have to say that.
Well, you can say that. But there were a lot of people like Hugh Scott then.
Yeah.
And he was a mentor for me. And when I came back from Washington in 1983, I felt a calling to go back into public service somehow. And I was fortunate to link up with some folks who said, "Would you like to be a township commissioner?" And of course I said yes. And I was on the board for 15 years, president for 5. And I think the most satisfying thing about it was the ability to get things done at the local level. Unlike Harrisburg and unlike Washington, and regardless of political party, when you're a governmental official at the local level, you can't pass the buck. You've got to get a budget done. You've got to plow the streets. You've got to clean the streets.
You have to fix the streetlights.
You have to do everything. You have to do everything. So we can't pass the buck. And for somebody like me who is involved with government relations in Harrisburg and Washington, where it takes so long to get anything done, when you go to the township government for assistance, it gets done. And I had a tremendous sense of accomplishment doing that, working for my community in Gladwin and Penn Valley, representing some wonderful people. And, I think, of course, very selfishly, that it was the most beautiful part of Lower Merion Township. It's certainly the least populated, more open space, more parks, almost country. So it's a great accomplishment for me to having done that, and a great honor to having served the people of Gladwin and Penn Valley.
Now tell us, what was the most aggravating thing that ever happened to you while you were the chairman? Because the people stop you in the street and complain, right?
I think the most aggravating thing is that people have a high expectation for services, excellent services.
And you don't get paid to do that.
Well, the pay is a different story. No, we don't get paid.
No pay.
The problem is that people in Lower Merion expect quality, excellent service, but they resist paying for it. And so you can't have it both ways. If you want excellent service, you've got to pay taxes. Now, one thing that people in Lower Merion don't normally associate with us is that the township commissioners only control 15% of your tax dollar. 70% of your tax dollar is at school district, and the county gets a piece of that tax dollar too. So when taxes are raised, it's usually not the commissioners.
It's the school
It's usually
board.
the school district.
Yes.
But we get blamed for it because people get one tax bill and they don't quite figure it out. But there's a sense of entitlement, I think, sometimes among some people. They also don't appreciate the fact that we're all volunteers. We don't get paid for that. And we spend endless nights,
Endless nights.
Very patiently listening to everybody who comes in.
And sometimes those meetings last till 1 o'clock in the morning,
Sure
and
they
they
do.
start at 7 p.m.
Sure they do. And the next morning, I've got to go up and go to work after spending the whole night there. Once we got on television, of course, a lot of people felt that they could watch it from home, which is great. But people do show up at the meetings, and they do express their point of view.
Absolutely.
That's the biggest frustration, I think, is a high expectation for great service, but a low expectation of paying for it.
Now, Duane Morris is one of the prestige law firms
Yes,
in
it is.
Philadelphia, but you're not a lawyer.
I'm not a lawyer. Our group is called Duane Morris Government Strategies, and we are an affiliate of the law firm, like a subsidiary. We're not lawyers. We lobby in Harrisburg, and we lobby in Washington, and we do some lobbying at the local level as well.
But it can't be just Republicans
Oh,
that
no,
lobby.
no.
You've got to have
No, I have
some from each side,
I have
right?
as many friends on the other side as I do on my side. You cannot be an effective lobbyist unless you have an ability to talk to people on both sides of the aisle, because parties change all the time. I mean, in Washington now, you have a Republican House, Republican Senate, a Democratic president. In Harrisburg, you have a Republican House, Republican Senate, and a Democratic governor. So I have to have the ability to work with people on both sides because I'm serving my clients.
When you were on the Board of Commissioners, your best buddy was a Democratic colleague, Joe Manco.
Joe and I have known each other for many years.
And I think you're still good buddies, right?
We're still good buddies. In fact, he and I serve on the Philadelphia Orchestra Board together.
Oh,
So,
is that why you're always in your tuxedo at the gala at the end of January?
At the Academy Ball. Joe and I are
Yeah.
always there, and we're good friends. He left Lower Merion a few years ago
Unfortunately, yes, he deserted us.
to live in town, but we see each other at orchestra board meetings. We see each other at concerts at the Kimmel Center, and it's one example where a political party doesn't matter. We're friends, and we get to see him pretty often.
It's not like Carville and Matlin, because you
Not
don't
quite.
sleep together.
No, we don't sleep together.
I could never figure out how those two could ever be married.
Well, they're fun. They're fun to
Well,
listen to. Yeah.
They've worked it out somehow that
Yeah.
they'll fight on camera, but the minute they leave the set, that's
Yeah.
it. They
Well,
put that behind
Joe
them.
and I had our disagreements, but it very rarely became personal.
You also do a lot of other volunteer work besides your work on the orchestra board.
Right.
And God bless Richard Warlid, because when Leslie Ann Miller's husband was convinced to become the president,
Yeah.
and I think he bailed out the orchestra when they were in bankruptcy, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, I got on the board just after the bankruptcy concluded. Richard is a terrific leader, a terrific chairman of our board,
and a fabulous guy.
and a great guy, and he was really in a unique position to help bring the orchestra out of that dark period. And we're still rebuilding. It's still a tough sell. The orchestra is not the only game in town for your entertainment dollar. There's all kinds of theater and restaurants, and people are, careful about where they're spending their money. Big companies have left Philadelphia. They're not like it used to be.
And Pep Boys is the latest.
Yeah,
Oh,
Pep
I
Boys
felt
is the
so
latest.
bad.
But I had worked for 17 years for Roman Haas Company, and the Haas brothers were extremely charitable in Philadelphia.
Amazing. And the William Penn
and the
Foundation
William Penn
they
Foundation.
created.
But now Roman Haas was bought by Dow Chemical, headquartered in Midland, Michigan. So the absentee ownership of the company doesn't have the Philadelphia focus that Roman Haas had, that Sun Oil had, that INA had, that SmithKline had.
And a lot of banks.
And a lot of banks. They're all gone. There's no bank, no national bank that's headquartered in Philadelphia anymore. So the orchestra struggles, like every other arts organization, to attract new concert goers and bring the same quality music that they have had for 100 years.
But the current orchestra leader, he is so delicious. You just want to put him in your pocket and take him home.
Yannick is a
Yannick
great
Nézet-Séguin.
right. He's a great music director. He's
Personality kid.
a lot of personality. He's a young man. He's just 40, and so we hope that younger people will be attracted to the orchestra to come in. I mean, we live in a region. I mean, the fact that I live in Lower Merion shouldn't deter me from being part of the city, and I am. I mean, I worked in Philadelphia for all these years, both at Roman Haas and at Wayne Morris, and I'm only a quick train ride or a car ride away.
On a good day, it takes 20 minutes to get from where I live to Center City, and I'm in town almost every day for
Right.
my clients or for pro bono work for a charity.
Right. I'm a 5-minute walk to the Haverford train station, and
Do you take trains?
a lot, yes.
I always need my car because I'm always running from
Yeah. Well,
one
usually
appointment to another.
I'm going to one place, usually in Center City. Occasionally I'll drive, but now that I'm so close to the train station, it's an easy ride for me.
Yeah. Now, one of your other activities, we both are on the board of the Anti-Defamation League. So, and I've been on, I don't know how long you've been on. I've been on a long time.
Yes.
You've been on a long time,
Yes,
too.
yes.
What attracted you to the ADL initially?
I was always involved in some kind of Jewish community activity in Washington. When I worked on Capitol Hill, I got to know the people from AIPAC, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, which is a committee that supports Israel. And when I came back to Philadelphia, I still had this interest in community service, public service, and I looked around to see what would be of interest. And having known the ADL people from Washington, I sought out Barry Morrison, who was then the executive director.
25 years Barry was the exec.
Right, and I told him my background in Washington and my experience as a lobbyist. Well, the ADL does a lot of work with government and with political officials, and I knew them all. And he said to me, great, I want you to come on our board. When we need to see a congressman or a senator or a governor or whoever it is, we'll go to you because I know you know them. And it was great. I really enjoyed my work with them. I'm also involved with the Jewish Employment Vocational Services, JEVS Human Services, which is a great organization, not well known, but they do job training, they do immigration services, they do drug treatment and counseling, a wide variety of things to serve the community. And it's not just Jewish citizens, it's across the board.
Right.
Across the board. So in addition to my job that I get paid for, I have a lot of nonprofit work that I do. I'm on the Ardmore Business Development Authority. I've been involved with them for a couple of years. And now, of course, I'm on the Cable Television Advisory Committee. So I've never quite gotten out of community service.
I served 2 or 3 terms on the Cable Television Advisory Committee myself. Mm-hmm. And the Comcast folks were always happy to see me at a meeting because I had a lot of friends at Comcast.
Well, we've had issues with Comcast and Verizon with regard to service. But I think both of them have turned around on it. And,
they respond. Though.
They respond now.
They respond
and
now.
Because when people complain about their service to the township, because we regulate them through the Cable TV Advisory Committee, we're able to cut through some of the red tape and solve a problem if somebody's not getting a good response from either Comcast or Verizon. But I think that's changed now, and I think they're very responsive, and we're very pleased to have them at our meetings every month.
And they also are required now to turn in a report
Yes.
how many minutes it takes for someone to wait on the phone to get service.
Right.
How late are they when they make appointments and so on. So that helps a lot too.
Yes, it does. And I think they're very responsive now to not only their customers, but to the township.
It was a learning curve for Comcast and Verizon. It really was. Because in the beginning, once they had a contract, they didn't understand they had to service.
Right. Well, it's
as
like
well.
it's like a monopoly of sorts, and once you get in the door, sometimes you forget how you got there. But the fact is that at the time I was an elected official, now I'm an appointed official, and I think they understand that there's a responsibility to report back to us and to the public, so that everybody knows what they're doing. And I think they're both doing a fine job.
Has Lower Merion Township suffered at all because for the lack of a state budget? Has that stopped payment in any way?
No, we're fine because obviously the tax money we get is locally generated. We may not be getting some of the grant money and other monies that come through Harrisburg. I think it's more of the social services agencies that are feeling the pinch. School districts are feeling the pinch.
Oh, yes.
But we're not the school district. So, I mean,
Right.
our township is functioning well. There may be a few areas where some money was expected but not yet received, but it's not critical right now. I hope everybody will get together in Harrisburg and work out a budget. But it's a political situation, Republicans and Democrats with different priorities, disagreements. But eventually they'll come together and get a budget, and I hope it'll be sooner rather than later.
Somebody's got to knock their heads together and say, you got to talk to each other, guys.
Yeah.
You have to work together.
Easier said than done.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Now, I saw you on television so many times when Pope Francis was in town.
Yes.
And he was right in Lower Merion. The way I got to see him was besides watching television unceasingly for 48 hours, I ran out and I stood at the corner of 54th and City Avenue, and I got to wave to him
Right.
as he went past. And he gives off this glow
Right.
and aura, same as 1979 when I was up front on Logan Square, or Logan Circle, when the last Pope came to town. And they give off an aura. And I mean, I'm Jewish, but you just feel it. Amazing.
He seems to be a very warm and caring person up close. You can just watch how he talks to people, how he looks you straight in the eye, how he's very sincere in his response to you, even though his English was a little bit limited. I got to know of him when my wife Nancy and I were in Buenos Aires a year ago. And we took a Jewish tour of the city, and we went to the church, which was the Pope's church when he was the cardinal there. And we learned all about him. And we also learned about a gentleman named Rabbi Abraham Skorka.
I spent a whole day with Skorka.
Well, Rabbi Skorka was
Yes.
the Pope's very good friend in Buenos Aires. They lectured together. They wrote books together. And at St. Joe's University, they recently unveiled a statue that it's the 50th anniversary of the Catholic Church's public disclosure that Jewish people were not responsible for the death of Christ. In Latin, it's called Nostra Aetate, which means in our time. And there's a beautiful sculpture now behind one of the buildings on City Avenue.
Chapel.
Behind the chapel on City Avenue, and it's open to the public. You can go just walk to it. And we were there to see Rabbi Skorka dedicate it, had a chance to speak with him there. And of course, 2 days later, he was back there with the Pope, and the Pope blessed the statue. Very exciting for St. Joe's, very exciting for the community, frankly, to have men of that stature coming to our community to do such important things.
You also had the privilege of welcoming the Pope to St. Charles Borromeo Seminary.
Right.
How did you get to be involved? Because last I noticed, you're not a priest.
No. I have some very good friends at St. Charles and some very good friends at St. Joseph's University. And they were very kind to offer us tickets and opportunities to be a part of that great weekend. And it really was a great weekend. We were at the Saturday night musical celebration.
Oh, you were on the Parkway.
Yeah, I was on the Parkway and had great seats, got some really terrific photos. of the Pope, and the entertainment was great. And he was very gracious to sit up there for a couple of hours.
And stay awake.
And stay, well, it was hard to fall asleep up there. I mean, you had all those lights on you. But he enjoyed it, and he got up to speak at the end without notes. He talked about, and of course, this was the World Meeting of Families. So the whole theme of the week and the theme of that weekend was families. And he got up and he talked about families, and he joked about mothers-in-law, and he talked about young marrieds, and you could just tell that even though he is obviously celibate, has no wife, he understood family relationships. He understood
Well,
family.
he came from a big family.
Well, yes, he did, but he understood family. He understood family struggles, and he understood that when you have have a family with two working adults, it has an impact on the family. The economy has an impact on the family. The stresses of daily life, with children in particular, have a real stress. And he understood that. And he was able to convey that to the crowd on the Parkway, 1 million plus whoever was watching him around the world, many, many millions more. So it was very exciting.
On Friday morning, I heard Rabbi Skorka speak at the World Meeting of Families.
Right.
And then I made sure that I went to St. Joe's to hear his lecture. That's
Right.
where I saw you.
Right.
Because he was the keynote speaker
Correct.
for the dedication of the statue
Right.
at their Jewish Catholic Institute.
Right.
But then I didn't have any tickets, so I just watched on television.
Yeah.
I was not among the
Well,
privileged.
it was very exciting, and
And the best thing that Skorka did, all week long, Sister Mary Scullion was worried, could she get the Pope to come look at her knotted grotto, where people had written, I think, 100,000
messages,
messages and prayers
Yes.
on ribbons that a sculptor had created. And Skorka suggested to the Pope, on our way down City Avenue, how about if we stop and you'll bless that statue? And he did. And on the way, wherever they were going, they also stopped at the grotto. And Sister Mary was levitating. She was so excited.
Well, for security purposes, they did not announce ahead of time that the Pope would be at St. Joseph's. But because it's in the neighborhood and obviously on the way from Center City to St. Charles, the people at St. Joe's did get a bit of a heads up that he's coming. And of course, they had the people there that they needed to be there. The students had gotten wind of it off of the internet somewhere, and they started to congregate in the courtyard here. So when he came, he was very warmly received. Rabbi Skorka was there, the president of the university. The new president of the university, Mark Reed.
Isn't that
was there.
amazing? He had been installed as president the week before.
Right.
It's a Jesuit university. How can you top having the Pope come to your campus the week that you were inducted as the president? I mean, he should quit right away.
It's got to be the highlight of his young life.
Absolutely.
He's only in his 40s, but I've met with him. He's a very nice man. I think he's looking forward to his tenure at St. Joe's. It's a great Jesuit university. They have a lot of community programs. In fact, on this issue of Jewish-Catholic relations, they actually have an institute in the university for Jewish-Catholic relations.
It's called the Jewish Catholic Institute.
Right,
Dr. Philip Cunningham.
Right. Phil Cunningham runs it. And
Murray Friedman, the late Murray Friedman, was responsible for helping them start
and
that.
they have a board, and they put on 3 or 4 programs a year. And they've done more to increase the dialogue between the Catholic and Jewish communities than anything else. The ADL, Anti-Defamation League, is involved with their programs. The Jewish Community Relations Council is involved with their programs.
American Jewish Committee also.
American Jewish Committee.
Because they were all there for the dedication of the statue.
And anything that we can do to foster dialogue between those two communities is very important. There's a lot of stress today over religion. Obviously, with what's going on in the Middle East, people have different views of what's happening, but we don't want any mistrust to exist between the Catholic and Jewish communities. And there's tremendous goodwill involved with Phil Cunningham and his counterparts in the Jewish community. So and I met with them just a week or so ago just to talk about their programs and what I may be able to do to help.
The Anti-Defamation League, a few years ago, added their first Muslim board member, S.A. Ibrahim,
Yeah.
who will be the honoree. By the time this airs, he may have been honored already, the Americanism Award dinner. But he's like the epitome of what interfaith relationships should be.
Right.
He's just a special kind
And
of
that's
guy.
what the ADL is all about. No place for hate.
Right.
You know, they've reached out into the skinhead community, and actually we're able to bring some people back out of it into a normal life. There were people in that movement who had never met a Jewish person in their life. So actually, one of them actually came to one of our board meetings.
Frank.
Frank,
young man named Frank. I
uh,
won't use his last name.
yeah, Frank Mintz or something like that. But yeah, Frank came and he spoke, and I think it was a moving experience for not only him to address our board, but the people, but the people around that table who had never been
absolutely.
exposed. His name was Frank Mink.
That's it.
Never been exposed to someone like him. So the ADL does some very, very important work, and I think Philadelphia, by and large, is a tolerant community. At least they try to be. There are tensions, of course, but there's a lot of goodwill, I think, and I certainly give a lot of credit to the mayor, who's done an awful lot of work in this area.
Yes. Michael Nutter, the outgoing mayor, and we'll expect a lot from Jim Kenney, who's probably going to be the incoming mayor. We'll see January 20th, but probably.
Well, you'll know.
We'll know shortly.
You'll know early November.
Early November, we'll know. That's right.
But
That's right.
it's a great city for diversity. Let's put it that way. I mean, anything that you want, anybody you want to meet, they're here. We have academics, we have medicine, we have technology, we have science, you have business, you have law. It's a veritable Noah's Ark of things. We have not like two of everything. We probably got 2,000 of everything.
Who's the CEO of Duane Morris these days?
Well, the chairman of our board is a gentleman named John Sirocco. John has been with the law firm for many years. He's a trial attorney. He's been very involved in a lot of local organizations, and he does a great job for the law firm. He's been there for quite a while now.
Is he the managing partner?
No, they call him the chairman. We're set up a little bit differently
okay.
than some law firms, but he's the chairman of the board of the law firm.
So he runs the place.
He runs the place, but he's very collegial in the way he runs things, and he relies very heavily on what's called a partners board, which is like the board of directors of the law firm. And we're a national law firm, so we have partners in New York and Florida and California and Illinois and places in between.
So when you go on vacation, you can also work.
I can if I want to. I try not to. But we're around the world. We're one of the first law firms to have offices in Vietnam. We have offices. We have 2 offices in Vietnam. We're in Singapore now. We're in London. So we're very much of an international law firm.
How many lawyers are there?
Oh, there's probably about 600 or so partners. And,
Oh my goodness.
And a couple of hundred associates, most of whom are in Philadelphia. But as I said, we're scattered around the country into offices around the world.
Do you watch The Good Wife?
I do watch it once in a while, but I have to tell you, there's nothing that goes on that show that's even remotely related to what I've seen in my law firm. It's drama, it's fiction, and I can tell you, speak for my law firm, partners don't deal with each other the way they deal on that television show. But it's TV.
It is entertaining.
It's entertaining, but that's all it is. It's not a reality show.
It's not a reality show. Well, our guest today has been Kenneth Davis, who is the Senior Director of the Government Strategies Division of the law firm Duane Morris. He's a longtime Lower Merion resident. Where'd you go to high school?
I went to Abington High School on the other side of town.
Boo. Anyway, it's been a pleasure, and we'll see everybody next week.
Thank you, Bonnie.